so we're going to be doing 2 out of the 10 things to do every day. Number 1 is a whole arm circle backwards. Number 2 is pushing your head into your hands, and we're going to discuss how that improves your everyday movement patterns and your overall posture. So the first thing I want to do is share a test with you, and it's called the Wall Angels test. I'm going to back up against my wall here. So feet a little bit away from the wall, about 6 inches away with my heels. And then I'm resting my butt, my hips, and I'm resting my shoulders on the wall. So the curve in my spine is basically in its natural curves, which is where we want it to be. And I can put my hand between my lower back and the wall because I've got quite a curved lower back. And then here's one test. Can you comfortably take your chin back? And we're going to be doing this in a minute. Can you put your your finger on your chin and push your head back in a straight line? Can you get your head to touch the wall? Or are you too far forwards? And is that really not going to happen? So that's the first thing. And I don't necessarily want you to do this test. I want you to look at it for the moment. We're going to repeat it at the end and maybe see what happens there. And then this is called the Wall Angels test. So another test here, and this is what we're going to be working on today, is can you get your arms nice and wide so your elbows are flat against the wall, and then can you get your hands without tipping, so without doing that with at your wrist, without tipping your fingertips back, can you get your hands flat against the wall? And I can't quite, and actually it's making me stick my ribs out a little bit more. But so that's what we're aiming for, the arms nice and flat against the wall, or reasonably flat. And then here's another movement, this is why it's called the Wall Angels, of sliding the arms up and down, keeping that head in contact, keeping the hips in contact, shoulders in contact. So that's the movement that we're aiming for, and we're going to test again at the end of this mini workshop, only half an hour long. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the double arm circles going backwards. So in order to be able to achieve that, we want to warm the shoulders and the ribcage spine up. And you might ask, what actually is the point of doing this every single day, this movement that we're building up to? It's to counteract this, to counteract our forward rounded shoulders, and we're very tight across the front of the chest, where we spend all our time, a vast majority of our time sitting and not opening up that chest. So we're trying to open up the chest. We're also trying to unstick the rib cage a little bit so that you can take that Wall Angels test and you're not having to flare your ribs, stick the lower ribs out. So just as our warm up, let's reach up for a change in my Move Better Every Day mini workshops, because we want to lengthen the spine. So reaching up, trying to touch the ceiling, and then lowering the arms, but just feeling that you've lifted the rib cage off of the hips and you've got a lengthened spine. And then we're just going to take some shoulder rolls, double shoulder rolls, going all the way backwards. The idea here is that you are moving the whole of that shoulder girdle, so the short sleeve of my t-shirt, the whole bit is moving around as much as possible. And let's turn it into a square if you can. So let's go forwards and then up to the top, and then squeeze to the back as far as you can and draw down at the back. Forwards, so just with the shoulders, up to the top, squeeze and draw down. Forwards, up and squeeze and down. And now just smooth out those corners. So making it into the biggest circle you can. And it looks like I'm moving my arms a lot, but that's basically because my shoulders are moving a lot. And my arms are just dangling, they're just hanging. You might find that you start to lift the elbows. You don't want to do that because you don't want to start to join in with muscles in the arms. Great, let's take a very similar movement, but let's take squares with the elbows. So put your hands on your shoulders. So we're coming forwards to touch if you can, which should have the effect of rounding out in your upper back a little bit. And then we're lifting, and then we're pinning back and drawing the shoulders down, the elbows down. Forwards up to the top as high as you can, opening out, pinning them back, drawing them down. And notice that your shoulders now are pretty much doing the same movement. I've just turned slightly to the corner just so that you can see. And also what's happening now, if you really try and get those elbows together and up to the ceiling and pin them back, the rib cage is happening, it's moving, it's shifting backwards and forwards, which is exactly what we want. So those were 2 warm-up exercises for this double arm circle, all the way up to the top. I'm going to come back a little bit, although I'm probably going to hit the wall. Can't quite see my hands. So my palms are facing each other as they go up to the top. So all the way up to the top, and then I'm turning my palms. I'm going to do this kneeling for you. So we're here, forwards, palms facing each other. I'm turning my palms and pushing the arms all the way back. And again, thinking about a square or the biggest circle that you can make. And actually, to get a little bit more rotation around the shoulders, take your palms up as you get to the top. And then palms facing each other, try and turn the palms away. So that's one of the first, well, on my list, the order that I've put it in, basically, one of the 10 things to do every day. Because we want to free up and open up our ribcage spine and just open up this chest. So there's a couple more things we can do to open up the chest. So let's bring our arms into a capital E. So this is, again, this is where you're going to be for your wall angel test. So elbows just slightly lower than your shoulders, hands above your elbows. So as if my head is making the capital E, it's lying on its side, if that makes any sense at all. And then from there, so opening up the elbows and the hands as far as you can, getting that nice stretch across the front of the chest, and then bringing your elbows together. So opening up and squeezing the elbows together, if you can. Trying to keep the shoulders down, but that'll be something we work on a little bit more in the next section. So we are generally quite tight across our chest because we just don't open up the chest enough. Everything we do is caving in and reaching forwards. So that's a really nice exercise to do. And you could do that as a stretch as well. I'm just going to move my chair a moment. So you either need a door frame, but I'm not going to open up the door, or you could go into the corner of a room. So I've got one hand here, one arm here, my elbows touching the floor, touching the door and then the wall on the other side, and then just push your chest forwards and release. Push your chest forwards and release. So really nice for opening up. Could do one arm. You can do one arm straight actually. So if I go there, imagine the door was open and I'm just turning away from it a little bit. And talking of turning, here's the last thing I'm going to give you as an idea to mobilise the whole of that chest if it feels really tight. So if this double arm circle is an impossibility, have a little look at this. So going against a nice clear wall, the arm I'm going to move is the back arm, so the arm that's closest to the wall. Feet facing forwards, hips facing forwards. But then just take the arm forwards. I'm 3 or 4 inches away from the wall, but this will actually depend on your mobility. So we're taking the arm up to the ceiling and then all the way back. I'm continuing to look forwards. I'm continuing to keep my hips facing forwards and then down. So if I was being really mean, if you really wanted to look at the amount of mobility you have in your shoulders and your spine, you would keep your shoulder absolutely square. But then for me, and I'm probably talking for most of us, you'll hit the wall. So in order to make that much more a natural movement, and it's something that will happen naturally in the body anyway, you open up the shoulders, but just the shoulders on their own. And then you've got your natural crisscross pattern. So turning around to the other side, be quite close to the wall. Hips, feet facing forwards, head facing forwards. And again, it feels nice around the rib cage. My palm as I'm turning, as I'm up at the top, my palm's facing the wall, and then as I'm turning, lowering the arm behind me, my palm is still facing the wall. Back of the palm, back of the hand as I go up, and turn it as I open out that shoulder. So if you've done a few of those on either side, now come back to this one. Another way to do this is not to be so straight with the arms, just soften the elbows, just so that you're getting the movement, but it's a bit more relaxed, and hopefully that should feel quite nice across the chest. Perfect, so that's all to do with number one, which is the arm circles in this series that I'm doing. Number two is pushing your head into your hands. It looks like this, so you're pushing your head into your hands and you're there. And it doesn't look like I'm doing anything particularly, but let's look at what we're actually trying to achieve. So we're trying to achieve getting the muscles strengthened in the back of the neck and the shoulders, the back of the shoulders, to prevent this. It's called forward head carriage. We all have it, but just to a certain degree. It's a problem with our modern day life because we spend too much time sitting. It goes alongside, it goes hand in hand with this being tight across the chest, which is why I've put these two together. So ideally we want to have the chest nice and broad, we want to have the head in line. So looking at our good posture, our postural alignment, the ear, so from the side, that straight line, the ear should be in line with just the front of the shoulder, down the side seam of my top, which you can see quite clearly there, and then down the side seam of my jeans, which you won't be able to see as well. That straight line, that plumb line, falls just in front of your ankle. So the ear being in that right correct position is because my head is in the correct position. But in order to achieve that, I have to take a little chin tuck and a slight retraction of the chin backwards. So just pop your finger on your chin. I'm going to stay sideways actually. And just push your chin in sort of thing, but push it straight back. So you're not lifting because that will change the shape of your neck. You're not tucking your chin in because that will lengthen the shape of your neck. You're just sliding the chin and the jaw backwards almost. So it feels like you're lengthening out this, the nape of the neck, if you like, the curve in the neck. And then we want to try and hold the head in that position to build the stamina there. So we can do it on the floor, we can do it on all fours when we're exercising in class, but I want to try and keep this as as much everyday movements as possible. So these can be really great little stress breaks as well. If you're working at your computer and you just want to do these two things, or just one of them on the hour, every hour. Try that for a day, see what happens. So we're going to interlace the hands behind the head, but even this is quite important. So interlace your fingers, and then try and have your elbows nice and lifted. Try and pull your fingers apart a little bit. Try and pull your hands apart, but it's like they're stuck like glue. And notice when you pull the fingers apart, do you feel any muscles switching on? And you can't quite see it today, but sometimes if I'm being really good, you'll see the muscles around my shoulder blades, on that outside edge of your shoulder blades, a little bit in the lats, the big muscles in the back, just drawing in a little bit. And actually you're pulling the shoulder blades apart and you're getting them nice and settled, so shoulder blades against your back, which is where we want them to be. And it's also activating the muscles which are going to help you keep your shoulders down. So it's quite difficult. You shouldn't be doing that at this stage. You shouldn't be lifting your shoulders up at the same time. So we're lengthening the neck, therefore lengthening the whole spine, as always. And we're pulling those fingers apart, elbows are out to the side. You could do this whole section seated if you want to. In fact, I'm going to take a little seat, I think. Yeah, I'm going to go this way. So I'm going to stay sideways on. In fact, I'll stay at a bit of an angle to start with. So we're here, pulling the elbows apart, and then take the hands at the back of your head. Now the bulky part of your skull, the biggest, the bit that sticks out the most. So not in the nape of your neck. Because when you start to slide that chin back, if you've got your hand in the nape of the neck, so I can't hold my hair up, and if you're sliding that chin back, you're likely to tip, but we want to actually stop the movement here, not down here, because you can just fold over there. So, interlace the hands, pull the elbows apart a little bit, try and pull the fingers apart a little bit. Place the hands at the back of the head, the bulky part of your head. Elbows are out to the side. I've twisted around to face the front as normal. Okay, and then we're going to bring those elbows forwards, just so they're in your periphery vision. So you just take your eyes from side to side. Don't need to move your head. You can see your elbows. And notice that combination of trying to pull the elbows apart and then drawing the elbows forwards. You should feel like your shoulder blades have become nice and snug against your ribcage wall at the back, which is exactly what we want. One more thing, lift the shoulders up towards the ears and take a shoulder shrug by drawing the shoulders down, and also feel like you're giving yourself a little bit of a hug around your armpits. Again, we're trying to keep the shoulder blades down in the correct position. So when you're doing the wall angels test, which we'll do again at the end, those shoulder blades are nice and flat against the ribcage wall, as opposed to them winging, which I can't make happen, but it's very common for them to stick out, and because they're not placed on your ribcage wall correctly. So, fingers pulling apart a little bit, elbows start by pulling in opposite directions, then you bring them forwards. Hug yourself with your armpits, give yourself a little hug, so that you slide those shoulder blades down in your back. And then from here, I'm just going to take this hand away. Imagine that hand is still there. So you've created a wonderful brace for your head. Now I've got this hand free, so I might as well use it. Push my chin back into my hands, but it's not going anywhere because of the brace of my arms. And that only really happens if you've got your elbows forwards enough. So it really is like I'm switching on those muscles. So this is to counteract our forward head carriage. This is pushing your head into your hands, activating all those muscles around upper back, neck, using an isometric contraction, which means you don't go anywhere, you just switch the muscles on. Holding it for a good, to start with, maybe 10, count to 10, and maybe do 5 times if you can. And then you just switch off. Now I'm alternating between doing the movement and switching off. You shouldn't really notice much difference. You might see a little drawing down more of my shoulder blades when I switch on, but that's it. So pushing the head into the hands, really, really easy. There are other ways to be doing this. Switching on, so build up if you can to 20 seconds hold times 5. Or just do it for a period of time. Just be walking around or while the kettle's on. Get everything in the correct position though. So we're going to look at just having that head in the correct position and the importance of exercising or training in the correct position. So the whole time I'm talking now, I'm switching on those muscles. I'm holding that. I'm applying that pressure with the chin going back into the hands. So if the elbows are too wide, the potential is to hinge somewhere else, to move somewhere else. That's the last thing we want. We don't want any movement at all. You're just switching on the muscles, building the endurance, and that might start to ache a little bit. So another way of doing this could be when you're sitting in your car or in a car, you're pushing the head back into the headrest the whole time you're at the traffic lights. Sitting up really nice and tall. Adjust your headrest so that it can work for you in that way. And you want your headrest to be at that place anyway to prevent whiplash, the whole point of the headrest. Another way to exercise these muscles, if you were just in everyday life, and say the wall angels test, say you've tried it already and you couldn't actually get your head back to touch the wall, try a cushion. So your butt against the wall, shoulders against the wall. So everyone should be able to do that. Remember, you don't want to be too close to the wall though, because that would just be uncomfortable. Knees slightly soft. This cushion for me, because I can already get my head to the wall really quite comfortably, that's way too fat. But that's what might be where you are. So take the cushion behind your head and push into it, switching on. So you haven't got to worry about any of the hand stuff. You're not moving, you're just switching on. You'll feel the pressure in your legs a little bit. You'll probably feel it in your lower back a little bit as well. Definitely don't have too fat a cushion though. So maybe, yeah, something that's really quite thin there. Because the last thing you want to be doing, and let's move on to that now. How are we doing? Okay, 5 minutes. Yeah, okay, so that's the exercise to try and do every day, because we want to counteract our forward head carriage. But how does it apply to other things that we're doing? So if you're doing your Pilates, for instance, or yeah, Pilates, let's go to the Pilates, or any form of exercise. So say we're doing an all fours movement, so you're on all fours. Now you might think, go sideways actually, you might think that you're in the perfect position, but what tends to happen, especially if you're thinking about something else, if you're concentrating on a different part of the exercise, or you might be doing something that's really quite hard for you, you'll find that your head ends up here. So that head ends up in that forward head carriage. So then what happens is, if I leave my head exactly where it is, and I come back onto my knees, it's quite difficult to leave it where it was, but I'm reinforcing the forward head carriage. It's partly because you might not have the stamina in those muscles to keep that head in line, and bearing in mind you're also working against gravity. But also this is a great thing to do to lift the back of the head and neck up. So you're working against gravity. It's like the opposite to pushing your head back. You're lifting, but you've got to rely on the muscles there. So sorry, I lost my train of thought there a little bit. So if we're here, you're reinforcing that position, and you're saying to your body, it's okay, carry on exercising, carry on doing whatever you're doing. It's fine, your head's fine. It's not fine, it's totally not fine. You're reinforcing that bad position. That's the third time I've used that word. I need to try and think of another word. But you know what I mean. So we want that head to be in line. The other thing that happens, and it's the way the body cheats all the time, and I see this constantly in class, is you might be here when you're exercising. You might be doing some knee lifts or something, or taking your leg out to the side, or bringing your arm forwards. But the moment that you sit up, you naturally bring that head back. So you'd be like, what is that she going on about? My head isn't there. It's actually quite difficult to let your head be in the wrong position and to bring your spine upright. Naturally, I want to just do that. But that's actually where it was. So maybe try that. So that's a practical exercising type movement. Have a little look at when we're either crashed out on the settee, for instance, and you haven't got any maybe support for your head, or even if you have, so your spine is in a rounded position, you're in a slumped position, the head tends to come forwards to counteract that. Again, look at the whole of my upper body posture. We're reinforcing that every time we're collapsing on the settee. Lying on your back, and in bed, I have a pillow, but seriously, the more I look at this stuff, I wonder whether we actually need a pillow. I think you need a pillow when you're on your side because of the shoulders, but when you're lying on your back, in fact I'm going to use this pillow as well. So this is the majority of us in bed. So we're lying on our backs, you might have your legs bent, and then I've got lovely double cushion going on there, and so I can actually, the angle of my eye line is to the door handle, so halfway up that wall. If I take the cushions away, I'm going to try and hold my head exactly where it is. We're there. And now that's really tough on the neck. Take my hair out of the way. Look how high up my head is. So what have I done? I'm going to try and stay in the same position. Oh, that's just ridiculous. The amount of pitch forwards in my head. So you're reinforcing that every single night. If you can, lying on your back, head on the floor. There, we're ready for the wall angels position. In fact, if you're down on the floor with me, or if you're just watching this, try this. So try the wall angels on your back. So the first thing you're going to check is whether your head can comfortably go down, and it's the the bulky part of your skull with the nape of the neck in place, opening out those arms into the capital E position. Now I don't know whether it's my shoulders or what, but I can't naturally get my whole arm flat. I don't want you to tip at the fingertips. I want you to just keep the wrists nice and straight. So this is shoulder mobility actually. So there's another exercise. We're starting to get into more exercises, and then from here, practicing the wall angel, but on the floor. So keeping the elbows flat, and this is easier, this is better actually in some respects for keeping your rib cage nice and flattened down. So if you find you're here, then you know that you're really tight, and that's the point of having an open rib cage. When you're reaching up, you're not shifting the whole thing because you can't, or you maybe can't even lift that arm up very high. So let's finish off with the old wall angel test. Just tidy up my cushions first. So we're feet parallel, butt against the wall, shoulders against the wall, elbows opened out, head against the wall, with your head in line, so not chin raised to try and get the head back there, to keep it in line, the tissue box is where it should be. Elbows, I still can't quite get my lower arm on the wall, but that's fine. Lifting up and drawing down. You won't be able to go too far here, just reaching up. And now your challenge when you're on the wall is not to let the ribs flare, so not to let that upper back. So push the ribs if you can, and that's what makes it even harder. So this is a harder version than on the floor, actually, what it is for me. There's more room, as always, when you're standing and when your body's free to be able to cheat. Fantastic, I hope you enjoyed. So move better every day. That was double arm circles going backwards and pushing the head into the hands, are the two movements to counteract our everyday rubbish posture. I hope that's been useful. Thank you very much. See you again soon.